I'm 78 years old, and I live alone in a house that still sounds like my marriage, if I'm quiet enough. Not the good parts, just the echoes. Doors that don't open anymore. A clock that keeps talking when nobody answers back. I'm not telling this because I need anyone to forgive me. I'm too old to go hunting for that now. I'm telling it because I know how easy it is to lose a whole life by saying nothing. Most mornings, I wake up before the sun, because my body still thinks it has somewhere to report to. I sit at the edge of the bed and wait for the stiffness to ease, and I listen. That's what old age is for a lot of us. Listening. In the kitchen, I make coffee the same way I always did. 2 scoops, water to the same line, the little hiss and click of the machine. Habit is a loyal thing. It stays when people don't. I drink it at the table, not because I'm hungry, but because it's the only place that still feels like a person sat there once. Across from me is an empty chair that I never moved. I could have. But leaving it there is my way of admitting something I didn't admit for decades. That she had a place. And I didn't act like it. When people talk about divorce, they like to point to one big betrayal. A secret affair. A shouting match. A suitcase slammed on the floor. Something you can point at and say, there. That's when it ended. For us, it ended the way some things die in the winter. Quietly, a little each night, until you look up and realize you haven't seen green in months. We didn't break because I was cruel. We broke because I stayed silent. I was a good provider, at least on paper. That's what I told myself. I went to work. I brought home the check. I fixed things. I paid the bills on time. I kept the gutters clear. I changed the oil. I did what my father did, and what his father did, and I thought that was love. But love isn't just doing. It's saying. It's showing up in the places you can't measure. And I didn't. I met her when I was 26. Her name was Linda. Not a name that sounds like a story. Just a name that belonged to a real woman with real hands and a laugh that came out when she tried to hide it. She worked at the front desk of a small medical clinic. I came in for a physical because the job required it. Factory work, loud machines, unions, and shift schedules. They wanted your blood pressure on file like it was a part number. She handed me a clipboard and a pen that had the clinic's name on it, and she said, "You look like you hate forms." I said, "I hate everything before coffee." She smiled like she'd heard worse. That's how it started. Not fireworks. Just 2 people in a small room with bad fluorescent lighting, recognizing something simple. We got married a year later. Courthouse wedding. We took a picture outside with her hair moving in the wind and my tie slightly crooked. I kept that photo in my wallet for years, even after the corners wore down. That's what makes this harder to admit. There were always signs I loved her. I just didn't know how to say it out loud. I grew up in a house where silence was how men stayed safe. My father wasn't a monster, not the way people say it now. He worked. He sat in his chair. He didn't talk much. When he did, it was about practical things. Money, weather, the car. If you got too emotional, he'd look away like you'd embarrassed him. My mother did all the talking, all the smoothing over, all the feeling for the whole room. If she was tired, nobody noticed. If she was sad, she still made dinner. That's how it was. So when Linda asked me questions, real questions, I answered like a man who'd never been taught that answers mattered. "How was your day?" she'd say. "Fine," I'd say. "What are you thinking about?" "Nothing." "Are you okay?" "Yeah." Not because I was lying. Half the time, I truly didn't know what I was thinking. I just knew I was tired. I knew I had responsibilities. I knew the world didn't care about your feelings, so why should I drag mine into the living room and set them on the coffee table? Linda didn't fight me at first. She tried. In the early years, she'd put music on while she cooked. Motown, some soft rock. She'd hum and sway a little. Sometimes she'd call me in from the den and say, "Come dance with me for a minute." And I would. Once in a while. I'd shuffle my feet, hold her waist, feel her cheek near mine. And for a minute, I'd be there. But then the song would end, or I'd remember the trash needed to go out, or I'd hear the news on TV and drift away. I thought being steady was enough. We had 2 kids. A boy first, then a girl. The hospital smell, the little plastic bassinet, her tired face after hours of labor. I remember standing beside her bed holding her hand, watching her eyes, and feeling something in my chest so big it scared me. I didn't say it though. I didn't tell her she was brave. I didn't tell her I was proud of her. I didn't tell her she looked beautiful even with sweat on her forehead and her hair stuck to her face. I kissed her and said, "You did good," like she'd finished a shift. It sounds small when I say it now, but those little words stack up. They build a life. Or they fail to. When the kids were young, life was busy and loud, and for a while that noise covered my silence. There were school lunches to pack, shoes to find, birthdays, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere. Linda took pictures. Linda made scrapbooks. Linda kept the calendar in her head. I worked overtime. That was my contribution. I told myself I was doing it for them. And maybe I was. But I was also doing it because work was simpler than home. At work, if you did your job, people understood you. There were rules. You had a role. You could be tired and nobody asked why. At home, Linda would look at me across the sink, dish soap on her hands, and I could see a question sitting behind her eyes. Not an accusation. Not a demand. Just a question. "Where are you?" it said. And I didn't know how to answer. There were moments I could have turned it around. I can see them now, like little doorways I walked past. One night, I came home late and found her sitting at the kitchen table with the lights off. Just the small lamp over the stove on. She wasn't crying. She was just sitting there, hands folded, like she'd been waiting. I said, "Why are you sitting in the dark?" She said, "It's quiet." I laughed a little, like it was nothing, and I opened the refrigerator and started looking for food. That was the moment she needed me to sit down, to ask what she meant, to let her talk. Instead, I chewed my sandwich and talked about a machine at work that had broken down. Another time, she told me her mother's doctor thought it might be cancer. She said it carefully, like she was handling glass. I said, "Well, they'll run tests." Then I turned back to the TV. I can't even explain why I did that. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I didn't know how to be present without fixing something. And cancer isn't something you fix with a wrench. So I hid in the only place I knew. Silence. And Linda learned, slowly, that if she came to me with pain, she'd be alone in the room anyway. People don't leave all at once. They leave in inches. In her late 30s, Linda started spending more time at her sister's house. She'd take the kids and go over on Saturdays, and I'd stay home to get things done. Mow the lawn. Reorganize the garage. Fix the hinge on the back door. She'd come back with stories and laughter already spent somewhere else. I'd nod and say, "Sounds nice," and go back to whatever I was doing. I didn't realize she was building a life that didn't require me. That's what silence does. It makes you optional. When our son was in high school, he played baseball. There were games on weeknights. I went to some. Not all. If I was tired, I stayed home. If it was raining, I stayed home. If it was an away game across town, I stayed home. Linda went to every single one. She sat on cold bleachers with a blanket over her knees. She cheered. She clapped. She learned the names of the other parents. She kept the score sometimes. I told myself my son wouldn't notice, but he did. Later, when he was grown, he said something to me that I still hear sometimes when I'm washing dishes. He said, "Mom was always there." He didn't say, "You weren't." He didn't have to. Our daughter got married when she was 24. Linda cried that day, the way mothers do when their kids step into the next room of life. I stood beside her in my suit, stiff as a fence post, and I put my hand on her back like a polite stranger. At the reception, she asked me to dance. I said, "Maybe later." She danced with our son instead. That picture exists too. Linda in her dress, smiling up at him, his arm around her. And me in the background, half turned away, looking toward the buffet table. It's strange what photographs show you once it's over. You can see who was present. You can see who was absent even while standing there. The slow cost wasn't a blow-up. It was 100 little emptinesses. It was Linda stopping mid-sentence because she knew I wasn't listening. It was her going to bed before me, not because she was tired, but because she didn't want to sit beside me on the couch while I stared at a screen. It was me saying, "I'm fine," so many times that it became the only thing she could expect from me. And the worst part is, in my head, I thought we were okay. We weren't screaming. We weren't throwing things. The bills were paid. The kids were growing. I thought peace meant love. I didn't understand that peace can also mean giving up. The turning point came the year we turned 52. Linda's mother died in February. It wasn't sudden, but it still hit her like someone had cut a rope she'd been holding for years. She was quieter for weeks. She moved around the house like she didn't trust her own feet. One night, she asked me to sit with her in the living room. Just sit. No TV. I remember the way she said it. "Can we just sit for a minute?" I said, "I'm tired, Lynn. I've got an early shift." She looked at me for a long time. Not angry. Not pleading. Just looking. Then she nodded, like she'd finally gotten an answer to something. She went upstairs alone. 2 months later, I came home from work and found a note on the kitchen counter. One page, torn from a small notebook. It said, "I'm staying with Karen for a while. I need space. I can't keep talking to a wall." That sentence, talking to a wall, hurt in a way I didn't know words could hurt. Because it wasn't cruel. It was accurate. I drove to her sister's house that night. I stood on the porch with my hands in my jacket pockets like a boy who'd broken a window. Karen answered the door. She didn't invite me in. Linda came to the doorway. She looked tired. Older than she had a few months before. Like something in her had shut down. I said, "Can we talk?" She said, "We've been not talking for years." I didn't know what to do with that. I said, "I didn't know it was that bad." And she said very calmly, "That's the problem." That was the clearest thing anyone ever said to me. We tried counseling after that, because that's what people do. But it felt like showing up to a fire with a cup of water after the house is already ash. The counselor asked me how I felt, and I stared at the carpet and said, "I don't know." Linda cried in that office. Not loud. Just tears sliding down like she'd been holding them in for a decade. On the drive home, she said, "I needed you when I still wanted you." I didn't answer. Of course I didn't. Silence was the only language I spoke fluently, and by then it sounded like violence. We finalized the divorce the next year. No affair. No scandal. Just paperwork and tired eyes. We divided the furniture. She took the photo albums. I didn't argue. Those belonged to her, honestly. She was the one who remembered. The day she came to pick up the last of her things, she walked through the living room slowly. She ran her fingers along the back of the couch, like she was saying goodbye to a version of herself that had sat there waiting. At the door, she turned and looked at me. I expected her to yell, maybe, or to say something sharp. She didn't. She just said, "Take care," and then she left. That's what can't be fixed. Not the marriage. The moment. The moment where she still had something left to give, and I had nothing to say back. For a while after the divorce, I told myself I'd adjust. I was still working. The kids were grown. I'd see them on holidays. I'd keep busy. And I did. I kept busy the way I always had. But busy doesn't keep you warm at night. Busy doesn't sit across from you at breakfast. Busy doesn't call you when you've been sick for 3 days and nobody's heard your voice. Linda remarried later. A good man, from what I heard. Not flashy. Just present. The kind of man who sits down when someone sits in the dark. I didn't hate him. I couldn't. He wasn't stealing anything from me. I had set it down and walked away, piece by piece. Linda died 3 years ago. That's the part people think would be the biggest wave. It wasn't. The divorce was the wave. Her death was just the tide coming in to show what had been left behind. Our daughter called me. Her voice was careful, like she was trying not to upset something fragile. "She's gone," she said. I sat at my kitchen table with the coffee going cold, and I said, "Okay." Not because I was okay. Because okay was all I had. At the funeral, I stood at the back. Her husband sat up front with the family. I didn't belong there, not fully. I was the old chapter, the one people don't reread. They played a song she liked. Someone spoke about her kindness. Someone mentioned how she never missed a game, never missed a birthday, never missed a chance to show up. I wanted to stand and say, "I know. I watched it." But I didn't. Afterward, our son hugged me. He smelled like aftershave and grief. He said, "You all right, Dad?" I almost said, "Yeah." But something in me cracked, finally, after all these years. I said, "No." Just that one word. It was the most honest thing I'd said in a long time. What can't be fixed is simple. I can't go back to that kitchen table with the lights off. I can't go back to the living room and dance when she asked. I can't go back and sit beside her when her mother was dying. I can't give her the version of me she needed when she still loved me enough to try. People think regret is loud, that it comes with sobbing and dramatic apologies. For me, regret is washing a mug and remembering that she used to buy the kind with a blue rim because she thought it looked homey. Regret is seeing an old couple at the grocery store arguing softly about which apples to buy and realizing how lucky they are just to still be in the same aisle together. Regret is the phone not ringing. Regret is the fact that my grandchildren know me as a quiet man who sends cards with $20 inside, because I never learned how to give them anything else. If you're listening to this, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't like being told what to do either. I'm a stubborn old man, still. But I will tell you what I wish I'd understood earlier. Before my wife became a memory I'm not allowed to touch. Silence isn't neutral. It feels neutral when you're the one using it. It feels safe. It feels like you're avoiding conflict. It feels like you're keeping the peace. But to the person standing in front of you, asking for you, silence has weight. It tells them they're alone. And if you tell someone they're alone long enough, they will eventually believe you. They'll stop asking. Not because they don't care, because it hurts too much to keep reaching into empty air. I used to think love was mostly about not messing up, about not cheating, not yelling, not failing. I thought if I avoided the big sins, I was doing all right. But love is also about the small courage of speaking when it would be easier to shut down. It's about saying, "I'm scared," or "I don't know," or "come here," or "tell me again." Even if your voice shakes, even if you weren't raised that way. Because the years don't wait for you to get better at it. They just pass. If this meant something to you, if it landed somewhere in your chest, you can share a thought down below. Not for me, really. For each other. Sometimes strangers are kinder than we expect. As for me, I don't have a neat ending. I have a quiet house, a few framed photos, and a lot of moments I finally understand. I still make coffee every morning. I still set one mug out without thinking, and then I put it back. And some nights, when the wind moves through the trees outside and the house settles into its own noises, I imagine Linda sitting at that table again, in the dark. Not waiting anymore. Just living her life somewhere I can't reach. I'm 78. There isn't much runway left. So I'm saying it now, finally, into this empty room, to whoever happens to hear it. I loved her. I just didn't say it in time.